Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our throwback review of the HTC Tilt 8925 or the Titan II in 2017. This is a device that came out originally in 2009 running on Windows Mobile with a single-core Snapdragon 400 MHz processor and a 2.8-inch resistive touchscreen display. What was unique about this phone for its time was its slide-out QWERTY keyboard and the fact that the screen could be tilted up at this elevated angle, which made it ideal for productivity as well as for viewing back images, videos, and for entertainment. Now, in 2017 standards, the phone is definitely both chunky as well as small in terms of its display. However, it does come with Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth, so in terms of connectivity options, it's still relatively updated. Taking a closer look at the hardware first, we have access to that QVGA display with a 143 ppi count. The battery is 1,350 milliamp hours and is replaceable behind the back cover. There's access to a earpiece, an LED notification light, and down below here there is a cluster of navigational keys. These are chrome etched and relatively tactile to tap on, but rather confusing for the modern smartphone user. They correspond to a 4-way navigational D-pad, a center OK key, 2 soft keys for selecting things on screen, and there's also talk and end keys, a Windows shortcut key that opens up the start menu. There's also an OK key in addition to a mail key and an Internet Explorer key, so a lot of stuff happening. Down below here, there is a micro SD card for expanding the built-in memory, which you will need if you want to plan on taking images or loading up more apps on this phone. There's also a semi-proprietary mini USB port for charging, and this is also where you need to plug in an adapter for the headphones, since there isn't a 3.5mm headphone jack, kind of reminiscent of some phones today. There's also a lanyard strap. On the other side, there's access to a scroll wheel, so you use this wheel to navigate things like volume, but you can also use it to navigate up and down through lists and tap on it once to select things. There's a dedicated OK key and also a push-to-talk key, so if you have a walkie-talkie subscription service, you can tap on this and the phone becomes almost, as the name suggests, like a walkie-talkie. You can talk to someone for free. And there's also access to a power on-off switch, a camera shutter key for the 3-megapixel camera on the back, along with the loudspeaker and the GPS module. The entire phone is very well constructed and carries on the legacy of HTC phones, which is very well built. You can see that it stood up remarkably well as far as wear and tear. The frame, though, is made out of plastic. Overall, it feels like a substantial phone. There are also a few chrome and aluminum accents on the front that makes it feel just a bit more premium. Now, of course, when this phone came out in 2009, it was meant more as a flagship and retailed for $200 with a 2-year service agreement. So it's interesting to see how far we've really come in terms of mobile computing technology. So taking a closer look at the menu interface now, there isn't anything super exciting to see here, just because it's running on a nearly stock version of Windows Mobile. So there isn't any skin on top of this mobile UI, like newer HTC Windows Mobile devices that has touch flow, but this one remains very clean. You can see how Windows Mobile quickly fell out of favor with both consumers and business users, just because the icons are quite small and not super finger-friendly. Regardless, there are a few things that HTC did build in, along with a few bloatware apps designed by AT&T for you to use some more of their services. In the main screen, you have access to things like notifications displayed on the very top. There's also a row of commonly used apps, messages, instant messaging, stuff like that, which can be customized. And then if I tap on the start kind of key here, I can go into all my programs. Here we can see a full list of our apps, and one of the areas where HTC added something new was kinetic scrolling, so I can actually flick up directly from this page. Believe it or not, Windows Mobile didn't even support this feature out of the box, so for most other phones, you had to use this little sidebar to pinch and then scroll your way through apps, which is quite sad by 2017 standards. But again, you can kind of scroll around here. Not the smoothest thing, but it works, and there is a mobile YouTube app, which still works, even though videos will only load in standard kind of 480p, so it's not high res by any standards. There's also a task manager. There's access to Opera Mini, which I had to install myself for quickly accessing the web in a more modern browser compared to Internet Explorer mobile. There's also Google Maps on here, AT&T Navigator, which is a paid service, so even though there is a GPS module, there isn't a free kind of maps that you get unless you count Google Maps and then save your own offline maps ahead of time. In terms of tools, you have some other things like a zip file manager for compressing your files, Bluetooth Explorer, there's an Adobe Reader for PDF documents, and of course, since this is a Microsoft phone, you can fully create, view, and edit Word, PowerPoint, and Excel documents, which is, again, quite helpful, especially with the built-in keyboard on here. In terms of games and apps, though, it's fairly scarce. There's a few kind of demo versions of apps, including Multi TV, which is a TV subscription service. There are a few standard games on here. Brain Challenge is a demo, I believe. And things that are standard include Bubble Breaker, which is a very classic game now, comes with every single Windows mobile phone, and was rather iconic for its kind of fun features as well as a test of Windows Mobile's hardware. Back to the main screen, the top also features some shortcuts that I can tap on once to look at things like my file manager, volume settings, time and date, battery status, which are a little bit hard to press, but they do work. Tapping on the wireless manager pops up a shortcut page customized by HTC, where the icons are slightly larger and easy to tap on, so I can turn on Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS separately to conserve on battery life. There's a little keyboard that I can also bring up if I want to type without the physical keys, and you can see how small this thing is. It's the default Windows Mobile keyboard, and it's definitely a struggle to type on without the stylus, so hunt and peck indeed. But thankfully, the built-in QWERTY keyboard was what made the Tilt a fairly good productivity tool for its time. It's a spacious four-row layout, and each of the keys are individualized, they're also backlit, they're tactile, responsive, and risen above the surface, which makes it a joy to type on for messages and even longer compositions. There's also two shortcut keys that, again, correspond to what you see on screen for tapping on things without having to access the display directly. There's also LED lights for things like caps lock and function keys if you tap on these, which are also nice to use. And you can also tap on this to start dialing numbers if you don't want to use the virtual dialer if you bring that up on screen. As far as phone quality is concerned, the HTC Tilt was decent on AT&T's 3G bands. It consistently got roughly 3 bars of reception here in the Seattle region and didn't really struggle in terms of phone calls. The microphone sounded clean, and the earpiece was quite loud. The speakerphone, however, was a little bit tinny and located again on the back, so it was easy to muffle up. But regardless, a decent phone experience. In terms of battery life, the Tilt could last roughly a day and a half before you needed to recharge it, so not a huge battery beast, and it has a, again, 1,350 milliamp hour capacity battery, which is tiny by today's standards, but you have to keep in mind that this phone doesn't have the fastest processor, doesn't have the largest display, so I expected the battery to last a little bit longer. Regardless, it works, and when it comes to general performance here in 2017, it's no longer super usable as far as browsing the web and whatnot, just because pages will render, but they are very slow to load, and more complex sites, I would recommend using Opera Mini just because that's slightly more updated, so you have more certificates and stuff updated, and you can still load back pages and their desktop variants as well, if you are patient. Two more things before we end this video. First, if you turn the phone over, you can see on the slider, this is actually where the full-size SIM card slot was located. So interesting placement. You didn't have to remove the back cover to access that SIM card. However, whenever you unlock this SIM card tray, the phone completely shuts off. So it seems like this also acts as a safety power key of sorts, which is kind of strange. You can see the mechanism of how the entire thing pops up and tilts, which I still think is a pretty cool trick. Phones today, if they have a keyboard, I think should still incorporate this tilt, since it really just makes the phone a bit more ergonomic and similar to a small laptop or UMPC, and for me that's an extremely cool concept and actually quite practical. So finally, let's take a look at the camera now. 3 megapixels, 2017 is definitely not very impressive, but what is nice is HTC built in, once again, software tweaks, so the keys and icons are oversized and easy to tap on without the use of a stylus. I can quickly focus on an image and then capture the shot with decent shutter speed, considering this is a phone almost 10 years old, and then tap on this again to take another shot. You can see here I can zoom in digitally. I can also kind of use the scroll bar to cycle through various modes, such as taking a photo, recording video at 480p, MMS video, which is lower resolution to send to my friends using text messaging services, and stuff like that. There's also filtering effects, which is kind of fun to play around with, built directly in, panoramic mode, sports shots, burst modes, and then finally back to the photos. I can tap on my albums to take a look at shots I already took, or I can drag up this little bar here to change things like white balance, saturation, self-timer, and the resolution count. So all in all, not a bad number of features that you get built in for such an old phone. It definitely suffices for some quick shots that you may want to share to social media, just if you are in an emergency or using this as a backup device, and it works. Focusing up close also isn't too big of a problem, as you can see here. So you can take landscape shots and up close shots on this particular camera. So anyways, guys, that's a look back or a throwback review of the HTC Tilt 8925 or the Titan II. I wouldn't say this is a phone that should be a daily driver anymore, but it certainly is an interesting piece of tech history. And I remember this being one of the earlier smartphones that were memorable, which I reviewed when it first came out. And even today, the hardware still stands out as being quite solid and also unique for its tilting display. The processor, of course, is no longer as powerful, and in terms of software, we can see how far the mobile OS arena has evolved, but it's still exciting to take a look back at this 2009 product. Thanks for watching this video here at OS Reviews. This was the HTC Tilt or the Titan II.